Hello and welcome in this last video where we are going to do our compositing work. Once we finished rendering, right now it is about time to start combining all the different elements, add a star background to our render, and basically make it possible for people to watch it in the form of a video. For this, there are two different options. Either you can continue working in your usual Blender scene, but I will highly recommend that you start a fresh Blender file because it is fresh and it will be faster, and that we will not ruin the 3D stuff that we did or the render layer that we set up in the compositing tab. That's why I will recommend that you start a fresh Blender scene. This is my fresh Blender scene. I'm going to pick general, and right away I'm going to jump to compositing. All of the work that we will be doing right now will be in the compositing tab. Number 2, make sure to check use nodes, and let's activate this magnet so our nodes will stick to the grid because that's satisfying. And another thing, which is that if you jump to your render output, make sure that the scene end or the number of the frames is 72 because that's the length of our scene. Make sure to change that to 72, the same length as your image sequence. And I'm just going to hit this to basically make the timeline in the middle. Right now, let's start compositing. First thing, I'm going to delete both of these two nodes, select them and hit delete. And I'm going to go Shift A and let's look for image to import an image. And the first thing I'm going to import is the image of the stars background, which you will actually find in the resources folder under compositing textures. You will find here this night sky. I'm going to import it into Blender. So click on open and let's choose night sky. Control Shift and click on it to see it. And this is what it is looking like. I'm going to hide this sidebar by hitting N, and the first thing that you will notice that it is so huge. If you want to make your image smaller, make sure to hit V. This will make it smaller, or if you want to make it bigger, you hit Alt V. This is a weird way to scale your preview image, but we just gotta deal with how Blender works at the end of the day. I'm going to jump to the last frame so that I will be able to see the Earth in its final state. So Control Spacebar and make sure that your cursor is somewhere in the compositor. Hit Control Spacebar to maximize this editor. So right now we can focus. Make sure you select your viewer node to be able to move this preview image slightly up. And this is what we will see right now. After doing this, let's import the image sequence of the Earth. So let's go Shift A and let's look for image. Click on open, Earth shot, and in the folder of your Earth shot render, make sure to hit A to select all the different images and click open image. Right now, this is our Earth shot. We want this Earth to be over the night sky. That's why there is a node in the compositor called alpha over, which will allow us to do this. Shift A and let's look for alpha over. Let's put it here. This node by default will put what is in the second socket above the first socket. The sky went to the first socket, so let's plug the Earth shot into the second socket. And boom, this is exactly what we want. This is more or less the final composition that we will settle on. But let's start doing some adjustments, and there are two things that we will be doing. First of all, adjust a little bit the grading of the shot, add more blues, make it a little bit more faded. That's number 1. Number 2, we'll add a really tiny animation to it by changing the scale of the different elements. And number 3, we're going to add some extra spice to this shot, like a little bit of blur, a little bit of glare, and a little bit of, let's say, lens distortion and lens and chromatic aberration. The first thing I'm going to do is to add curves. So let's go Shift A and let's look for curves, RGB curves, and let's put it here. The look I have in mind is a slightly faded look when it comes in the blacks, which means that I'm going to take this point and bring it a little bit up. But generally, this curve is like really sensitive. So even though I move this point like really tiny amount, the effect is really drastic. That's why I would rather basically getting back to its original position, and I'm going to hit Shift and change the value from here in really small increments. I just want the hint of faded look, not like fully faded, let's say. And yeah, I'm digging this result. This is the before and this is the after. And yeah, this is looking pretty good. I want to add some blues or some cyans in the top areas or in the highlights. That's why I'm going to red and I'm going to lower it to something like so. So now this is the before and this is the after. This is the before, this is the after. And as you can see, we're adding a hint of cyan in the highlights. And let's add a little bit of blue to the highlights also. Something that will look just like so. I think this is good. And let's reduce the magenta a little bit by reducing the green. This is the before and this is the after. This is the before and this is the after, and I'm really digging this result. Right now, let's add some transform node to create a really simple animation. And here's a really handy shortcut. If you select all of these nodes and hit H, you will be able to minimize them, which will give you more screen real estate, let's say, to do your work. I'm going to select all of these nodes, move them a little bit down. And the first thing I'm going to do is to make the earth slightly smaller. So let's go Shift A, S to look for something. And let's look for transform. I'm going to put it here. And in terms of scale, I'm going to change it to something like 0.8. And I'm also going to the night sky, and I'm also going to add another transform node, and I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to create a really simple animation. Here's what we will be doing. I'm going to hit Control Space Bar to get back to my usual view. Let's select the viewer and move it slightly down so that we will be able to see everything. I'm going to jump to the first frame. Okay, and I'm going to create a keyframe for the angle of the night sky, scale of the night sky, insert also keyframe. Also a keyframe for the angle of the earth, insert keyframe, and a scale for the angle of the earth, insert keyframe. And after that, I'm going to jump to the last frame, which is 72. I'm going to bring the scale of this space background to something like 1 point, let's say 1. So it is slightly bigger. Make sure to insert keyframe. And I'm going to change the angle to something like 3 angles and insert keyframe. And same thing I'm going to do for the earth. I'm going to rotate it 3 degrees and insert keyframe. And I'm going to change the scale from 0.8 to something like 0.9. So it is slightly bigger, and insert keyframe. So this is our animation. I'm going to select this and select all of these nodes, hit T and choose linear. And same thing for this transform. Make sure to select all of these, hit T and choose linear. So you will have something looking like this, and it will go to this. Yeah. This is exactly what we want. Some of you right now might wonder, why did I choose to do this animation on each node separately? The main reason I'm doing it this way is that this will ruin my render. Here's what I mean. I'm going to select both of these 2 nodes, and I'm going to hit M to mute them. Right now we don't have any sort of animation. And just to show you what will happen if we choose to do it, let's say the conventional way, by adding a transform node at the end of my node tree. In my viewer, I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to make this image slightly bigger so that we can see it. I'm going to go and make the earth smaller, just like we did. So let's go transform. And I'm going to put it here, and I'm going, let's say, to make the scale something like 0.5. So we made right now the earth smaller. Right now, if I jump right here and add another transform node, and I'm going to cancel the scale operation. We scaled by 0.5. So right here, I'm going to scale by 1.5. This will basically make, or actually probably it is even more, something like so, like 2. Oh no, wait, 2? Yeah. This will cause a little bit of degradation in my earth shot scale, because first we're scaling it down and then we're scaling the whole thing up, and that will cause a little bit of degradation and we will lose a little bit of resolution. That's why I think it will be better if we create or add a transform node to each layer on its own, to each node on its own. I'm going to select both of these transform, X to delete it, X to delete it, make sure to bring this here, and I'm going to select both of the transform node and hit M to unmute them, and I still don't see anything, so Control Shift and click on this to be able to see the final result. And the last thing we are going to do is some final spice. The first thing I'm going to do is add some glare. So let's look for glare. I'm going to change it to fog glow, change the this to high in terms of resolution and the quality of the fog glow. For the threshold, I'm going to lower it to 0.2. Or let's say 0.1. Yep, this is better. I'm going to leave it at this. Let's add also a blur node to slightly blur our render. And in terms of size, I'm going to just make it 1. And let's add a lens distortion. This is the usual stuff that we do in every tutorial. And basically this will be distortion 0.01. And for the dispersion, which is the chromatic aberration, let's do 0.5. A really tiny amount will do the job. And that's basically it. The last thing that we are going to do is to go Shift A and let's look for file output, connect this to this, and in terms of the final render, I want it to be by hitting and jump to node properties. From here we can pick the final format that we want. We're going to render this as a PNG sequence, so make sure it is RGB, we don't have any alpha, and let's call it, for example, final earth shot v01 underscore, like so, and let's choose the location. Let's say it is in our earth shot. And I'm going to create a new folder and let's call it final earth shot accept. And once you do this, all we have to do is to go to render and render animation. This should be really quick because we're just rendering a sequence of images. Once your render is finished, let's close this, and the first thing I'm going to do is to hit Control Space Bar to get back to my usual view, and I'm going to jump from here from General, Video Editing. What we want to do right now is to transform our render into an actual MP4 video that we can publish on the internet and all of that. Once you do that, make sure to go to Add, Image Sequence. Let's jump to Earth Shot, Final Earth Shot. These are all the final images that we got out of compositing. Hit A to select them all and hit Add Image Strip. And let's make sure it is in the beginning of my timeline at frame number 1. Just like so. Once you do that, we're going to render this shot even one more time. So let's go here in your output panel, and let's jump to render, and in the file format, make sure it is set to MPG video, which is the usual MP4 video. For the encoding, let's make sure it is H.264. Medium quality, change it to high quality. Encoding speed, let's keep it at good. And yeah, these are all the settings I'm going to change for now. And where I want to save it, I'm going to also save it in the Final Earth Shot. I'm going to Final Earth Shot, and I'm going to save it as Final Earth Shot 01. Right now it will be an MP4, accept, and go to render and render animation. This should be really fast, like blazing fast, because we're just rendering a simple image sequence. And right now, if I jump to my assets, Blender projects, Earth Shot 01, Final Earth Shot, I will have, first of all, these are the different images that we had out of compositing, and this is my final video. Boom. This is looking really nice. Anyway, that's it everyone for this course. I hope you like it. I hope you learned a little bit about how to create planets and all of that. Feel free to check the rest of my courses here on the platform, and I will see you in future courses.